edition of CreateAWorld. We're thrilled to have you here with us. I'm Janice Cronetti. I'm one of the collaborators. I'm here with Victoria McMahon, who is also one of the collaborators, and we're excited for our conversation today. So if you are new to CreateAWorld, I just want to give you a little bit of a background of what we do here. So we are a cultural wisdom community, and we come here together to explore what it is to make a place for and be supportive of, and give energy to new realities rising. That's what we mean, literally create a world. Certain principles that we operate on in the field of Tantra Mat, which is the field that holds this community, that everything has a place, that everything operates on behalf of everything else. Everything's part of everything else. Everything is in relationship with everything else, and everything operates on behalf of life having us exist as whole. And I think that point is going to be really important, particularly for the conversation that we're going to have today. And that everything is also always moving to the next greater whole. We believe in the power of things that are life-enhancing and life-giving. And when we come together, it's a time for us to be curious with each other. We do not come with answers. We come with questions, and we explore with each other, and almost always find some new beautiful place to stand. And we really see this as a container in which we can enhance that which is life-giving. And we love it if you interact with us, because you are a unique and essential design. And when you contribute your unique and essential design to the conversation, it becomes even more rich. So please do feel free to ask questions or comments on the YouTube thread. So Victoria, over to you.
I love how you introduced CreateAWorld. It sparked that aspect in me that loves to be in conversation, not with an agenda, not with a knowing in my mind, but the knowing in that inner wisdom, that wisdom collective that you spoke of, that is CreateAWorld. And how do we sit with one another in a way that sparks that alive? And so I was telling Janice earlier that often in the shower I get pinged by something, and I was like, I don't know if it's going to come into the conversation, but in sharing it, I think it might spark a dialogue with all of us, including all of you that will pipe up, what is it for you? And that's where I think our collective wisdom does enhance our lives, because we come together in a spark of the magic of being present in the moment with each other, and how we embrace and stimulate that next movement on. So the ping that came for me in the shower this morning was something that Tantra Mat had shared earlier in the week on a community thread. And it was essentially, be in the observing nature of yourself and leave the opinions aside. And that prompted me to connect to a book I've been reading about our mind of thought, which is life enhancing, and how we get stuck in looping thinking. And I connected those dots of the idea of looping thinking with opinionating. And and how the minute I form an opinion, I'm out of that life enhancing thought that just rises in the moment. So I'll stop there for a moment. Janice, what pops for you?
Yeah, I so relate to this idea of the opinion, being to me, it's the opinion that keeps me in the looping thought. Because it's like, well, then once I have this opinion, then I can't access any other ways of thinking that perhaps would serve me better. And so to me, that's the power of developing our ability to be present with something without feeling the need to put a label on it. And that's really challenging given the ways in which we've been raised to think and look at the world, at least here in our Western culture in the US.
Yeah. And just by the very nature of the ego mind and how it designs itself, that if we lose that power of presence, that that living in the thought that simply comes and goes, then it's whatever version of opinioning is happening. So I love this whole be here now, all of the power of presence, the observing nature that there's so many of us across the globe that are in a practice of how to be in the powerful presence of ourselves, and that we know in those moments that we're not opinioning. We're just not. There's no room for it, because the opinion is either a past-based thinking pattern or a future-based thinking pattern. And I can imagine, for me, the future is imagining that reality, and still that's in thought. That's in connected to the presence. It's not opinioning when I'm imagining as well. Over to you.
So Victoria, I'm just thinking about this idea of presence, and I'm thinking about work I'm doing with a new field network right now about the power of somatics and the body. And so because I know that you have a lot of background in this, I'm curious, what have you found to be helpful strategies for staying in that presence, and in particular, where your body's concerned?
Ah, I love how you turned it. I love how it's like, I'll pop this in and then I'll answer it. I was listening to the radio the other day, and I heard the song Turn, Turn, Turn from the
Mm.
Birds. That was the very first 45 I ever bought as a young girl. And I'm not sure why that's presencing, but that's one way that my mind does it, is simply listening and observing what is coming through in the moment. And then the mind within the body is listening, the body sensations, is listening, as you're saying, somatic work. The cells of my body light up with just the word somatics. The cells of my body start saying, hello, good morning. And the way that happens for me, and I think it's different for each one of us because we are unique and essential beings. But for me, I kind of equate it to when you open a champagne bottle and all the bubbling fizzing comes up, and it can touch your nose, and you can feel and imagine that bubbly sensation in the body. That's what my cells do. It's like they start dancing around in there. and they start doing the bump with each other. And it's like a big happy dance in there. And that's one way it can come when I'm in my imagining or in my observing. And I just get interested and curious. So that's probably one of the big ways. Um, how about you? What's unique to you?
Yeah, I think this idea of curiosity is really powerful. In fact, so my niece gave me a page a day calendar for Christmas this past year, and yesterday's page said wonder over worry. Um,
Oh.
yeah. That'll be one that goes up on the fridge. Um, because we lose so much when we tell ourselves we already know. And if I find myself in a worry, which I mean I do tell people if you were raised by Italians as I was, they can be gold medal level warriors. The worry is definitely something that I have to watch. Um, And again, when I find myself worrying, it's because I'm either, like you say, I'm either in the past or I'm in the future. I'm worried that something's going to repeat itself, or I'm worried about something that's coming. Um, as opposed to wonder, curiosity, right? You have to be in the moment to do those. I mean, you can only wonder and be curious really from right where you are. Um, So if I find myself having a miscommunication with somebody, I might stop and wonder, what when I say this word, I think I mean this. When that person says that word, what do they mean? Where might we be misaligning, even though we're actually trying to say the same thing? Um, and in the moment, in the present is the only space available for creating too. So, if I'm again worried about, well, how am I going to accomplish this? That's not allowing me to be in the present to look at, well, this is everything I have available to me. And this is everything that I want to do to say that I accomplished whatever I want to accomplish. And, because it's in the moment that I have to be able to, pull resources together, animate it with my life force to be able to, move to whatever I want to move to next. But, and, and emotional things, like being able to be in a state of love, or being able to be in that state where I really believe in the goodness of humanity, of the goodness of myself, right? All of those things, which in my opinion, we have to be able to harness to stay in that life enhancing place. But all of those things are only available in the present moment. And to me, it's curiosity that can help us ground there.
So two things really pinged me. I'll go with the first one first. When you talk about your cultural heritage and that worrying is in the DNA, if you will, I'm wondering in the moment when you think of it like that, how does your cellular being feel about worry?
I mean, I think my cellular being sort of has a chuckle about it. And because my cellular being is able to identify that is coming from love. Um, and so it sort of, takes the sting or the wrongness out of it.
Mhm.
But my cellular being also tunes into the heaviness of worrying and would prefer a lighter path.
So I'm gonna be curious a little more if you're willing. When you sit and breathe in your cellular being right now, And is it really saying through your body sensation that worry is heavy? And what is that? What do you sense?
Yeah, and maybe not even worry, but definitely constricting.
Uh, so you get a constricted sensation
Mhm,
around the DNA of worry.
mhm,
Yeah, so I get when I think about curiosity, I get things popping in my cells, right? So when you think worry, you get this constriction. That's what I'm
mhm,
talking about, our
mhm.
capacity to observe and be curious. And that keeps us in the moment without labeling it a good or a bad thing, right? It's just, oh, worry is constriction for me. All right. Part part two. I heard an aphorism a number of years ago that I used to keep on my fridge, and see how this lands for you. It says worrying is praying for something you don't want to create.
Right. And and I think it's important to differentiate between worrying and planning, right? I mean, I live in Florida. They're predicting a, much higher than normal active hurricane season. We've already seen some evidence with that with
Mhm.
Hurricane Beryl. Um, and so and sometimes I find myself worrying about that. But
Mm,
worrying about that is going to in no way prepare me
right.
for that, right? Now I can plan, and I will probably in these next, because they're
Mhm.
saying right now it should be quiet till probably the middle of August. So in the next couple of weeks, I'll buy some more water. I'll stock up on some more food that doesn't have to be cooked. But I can do that from a life-giving place. I
Oh.
don't have to do it from a place of fear or constriction, or I can just say, okay, that's a possibility that's out there. I
Mm,
can do some things to be ready for that possibility. But if I shift into worry, I mean, for me, worry usually is because it's constriction, what that usually results in is paralysis.
yeah.
And and that's and what do I do from there, right? So, to me, it's also about it's about recognizing the particular aspects of worry that do not serve and be able to move instead with other things that do serve.
And in the sign behind you, that is the work that you do, is the word truth.
Mhm.
And that popped up for me that it is hurricane season in Florida. And that is a truth. It can occur at any moment. It's unpredictable. And the truth of the matter is for you, doing some preparation on behalf of yourself to ride the wave if it occurs is simply a fact. That's a smart thing to do. That's the truth of the matter. The worrying about it is the adding on to the thought, I need to stock up so that if something occurs, I'm taken care of, or I can take care of others if need be as well. That's a thought. The worrying is the afterthought. Da, 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 da. Who knows what the scenario and how big the story will get? It's like that old saying, there's a kernel of truth and there's a boulder, right? Like I think in this moment I'm thinking about the boulder is the worry, and you've just like true, true, and it's so big that you become paralyzed, like you said. And if you're in thought, you're in the activity in relationship with the universe, and you're just simply doing what's next, observing and responding to the next now moment. And that's the powerful presence that we spoke to earlier, is we're looking at it in the activity of who we are. Beyond the first thought brings the next thought, the next to the do from the be in the present moment. And I think that's a beautiful example to help us all like distinguish ourselves when we're in thought and when we're in looping thinking, which we're calling worrying today. That's brilliant.
Yeah, and um, one of the other things that's been present for me as I've done some work with Newfield is just coming into a full realization of the power of the mind in terms of, you know, being our ally in a particular moment or being a hurdle to overcome. And I think there's so much that goes on here that is subconscious, that comes from, you know, our culture, the way that we've been raised, all of the messages that we've absorbed without realizing that we've absorbed them. And I think one of the greatest gifts that we can give ourselves is to look in on that and start to discover and become aware of all of that's operating up here, and allowing ourselves to be a choice with what we continue to move with and what we decide we may want to put aside, even if we can only put it aside with a moment. I mean, I don't, I'm, you know, I'm better with at managing worry than I was maybe 5 years ago. It would be great if I continue to get better with that. We'll see. But even to just be able to recognize, in my body, in my head, oh, that's worry. Do I want to stay there, or do I want to shift to a different thought, like being in planning versus worrying? Or maybe I want to put the hurricane thing completely aside and I really want to, enjoy the drumming class I'm going to take or whatever. But it's this whole notion of recognizing that we have so much choice about what happens up here. And I'm also discovering that a big part of making that choice is listening to my body. Because I feel like my body speaks without the programming. My body will tell me the truth about something, in terms of how something makes me. If I think about taking on a new project, uh, I'm very clear. I get very clear communication from my body nowadays. If I think about taking on a new project and I either feel energized or I feel like a giant mosquito is sucking all the blood right out of me.
I love that.
Um, I there's so much wisdom that I'm discovering in my body, and I think it's in that, and listening to that helps me manage what happens up here.
I I will say it. I will say it just a little bit different in the way I've come into relationship to the power of being present through the body. Is the body actually reveals the programming, whether it's worry or whatever emotion, the body reveals it to us. And the access to getting that revelation is the breath, because the breath is so tuned to the body naturally. It has to be in order to keep it functioning, right? And the breath is our best friend, has been part of my life mantra. And in order for us to create that access to the curious, the observer mind, instead of the opinionated, place in ourselves is it's necessary to pause. I was working with a client one time, and she was in a worry type thinking mode, and her cat came over and laid on her lap. And I observed her body just relaxed. She paused and took a breath in and acknowledged her animal comforting her. Mm. And so we created a little access point there. The pause of the cat helped her pause. And it was a way that the mind could connect. Oh, anytime I'm in a looping, thinking, worrying, or whatever, I can see my cat, my pause, and I can pause. And that is, for me, the most powerful access point, because as we sit here breathing together, and as we had a soft pause before you were speaking again, I could feel the body go into curiosity and listening mode and saying, what's rising now? And it's a practice. It's a practice that we can choose, like you said, choice, that we can choose to take on. If I want to step aside from this thinking pattern, my first access point, the easiest access point to me, is to pause and breathe and see, what does my body want to reveal from that looping pattern I was in? What would it have me know? And I can go to all these beautiful programs, and I can read all these stunning books that can help me too. And my breath is free. It's 24/7 available to me. And I think we're underutilizing our own power and source nature to source ourselves through and beyond our opinions of ourselves and others.
Yeah, and because our breath is our breath is literally part of being alive, right? I mean, it's such a fundamental, foundational access point to being alive. We stop breathing, we're in trouble. So, so to get to know that essential relationship, right? I mean, that's really how I see it, is with the relationship with our breath as an essential relationship. And to really, you know, that investigation, that curiosity that we're talking about, really allow yourself to just play with it. And, you know, what's it like to, you know, inhale through your nose versus through your mouth? What's it like to exhale through your nose versus your mouth? What's it like to take, you know, a big inhale versus a small inhale, a long exhale versus a abrupt exhale? You know, there is so much to discover just in breath, that, yeah, it can open whole new worlds to us.
Yeah, and the other thing that most of us don't really realize is that as you breathe air in and out, what is carried in the air itself, coming in and out of the body, is what in yoga we call prana. In Tai Chi, it's the chi, it's the ki, those different names we have for the life force energy that animates the physical being, that comes and is a part of everything, and everything's a part of it. And so for me, if I am consciously in a breathing practice, And that could be while I'm sitting here with you, I'm consciously in my breathing practice. I'm consciously feeling that life force energy that comes into the body and then goes back into the everything that I'm a part of. And it also expands my curiosity and my relationship that I'm a part of everything. And that's one of the principles that guides us in powerful presence. If we truly know, feel, experience our breath and the prana, and can live in the thought that we're a part of everything and everything is a part of us because of this breath, it's a truth that we are in the present moment. We can't be anywhere else. And so therefore opinions just simply dissolve. I love knowing that. It sustains me. It sustains me. And it can sustain each one of us if we take on the practice of it to really bring it in, feel the powerful essence of it in every moment that we can do it. And the more we practice, the better you get at it, no matter what you're doing. And that's what jazzes me, that life itself is so much more amazing and so much more fulfilling than any opinion I might have about something or someone or some event. And so today it's like coming back to, yeah, that's the foundation. And so if I want to get beyond my opinions, I come back to my foundation. So I'm really appreciating this conversation to re-energize, resource my own practice, my own truth and knowing that this is how I create a world. This is how we create a world.
Yeah, and the other piece that's coming up for me that, I think is sort of in all this. So this notion that as human beings, we are a trinity of our body, our language, and our emotion. And part of, as we've been talking about everything we experience, emotions are a part of that as well. We are emotional creatures. We experience emotion all the time. And we have a tendency to do the same thing with emotion in terms of labeling it good or bad. And I mean, just ask yourself how many times in your life you've said to yourself some version of, well, I shouldn't feel that way. But if we can instead be present and be curious and in the moment, generally, if we're experiencing a good emotion, we're not trying to get out of it. But if we, good emotion, but when we experience an emotion that we are finding unpleasant at the time, then we may find ourselves wanting to get out of it. And if instead and so often what that results in is we push it away, we push it down, we do something like that ends up not being in our own best interest.
Yeah, we create an opinion of the emotion itself.
Exactly. And so if we can instead come into this place of curiosity and just say, and just feel, gee, what does this emotion feel like in my body? What does worry feel like in my body? And is there a way I'd rather feel instead? And is there some important piece of information that this emotion is bringing me? Is this emotion pointing me towards something I need to do for myself or something I desire to do for another person? Or is it simply reminding me of the power of the stillness in the moment? But if we can be curious and present with those emotions, they can do the job that they're supposed to do, which is to inform us and then move on.
And they can also give us access to the body intelligence to reveal those opinions more clearly, and to release what has been constricted in there. Because like you were saying, worry is a constriction. Other ways, other stories that we have, opinions that we have about ourselves, can be stored in the body. And there's a couple of just things that rise for me when it comes to emotion. I love a practice that I learned, and I created an acronym for it, and it was from the Emotional Wave of Stephen Cope. Probably 20 years ago, I learned this. And I've used it in terms of being present through the breath with emotion. And what we've learned is any emotion has maybe a life of about 90 seconds. That's a minute and a half. That if we can ride the wave and be fully present with the emotion, then it kind of rises up and dissipates down, and we see what's left in the residue of it after we ride the wave. And I think a lot of times that when emotion rises, it starts to come up towards its peak, and we oftentimes, right or wrong about it, opinionate about it, and we shut it down. And so it never even gets to the peak. So it doesn't even have an opportunity to dissolve and have its place in our experience. And so one of the practices, I call it brifwa, because I just took the words. I have to come into my breath to be in the presence of it. I need to give myself permission to feel the emotion. I need to, in order to do that, I have to relax myself. So breathe, relax as best you can, and then feel it. What does worry really feel like? Worry is kind of one of those words that we think it's an emotion, but I don't really think it is. I think it's more of a looping thought. What would be the emotion that goes with worry for you? I don't know. Does one come up in the moment?
I mean, I think generally fear is laced in there.
So we feel the fear that is attached to worry. And then we observe or we watch what it is to feel fear in ourselves, in our physical body. How do we register fear? In our thinking, what thoughts become the opinions, the looping of it. And then we take with the breath, we take the moment to allow, to give it a place and say, it's not good or bad. It's simply what's rising. And I have found when you go through the whole breathe, relax, feel, watch, allow process, it takes a good 90 seconds to do that. And at the end of it, you get to experience the end of the wave dissolving and see what's there, which you're saying is the next action step. Okay, what do I do with this? Do I breathe it again? Because it's more overwhelming than it might be one of those moments where it's just kind of popped in and it's not as big of a deal. One round may just kind of give me a more relaxed place about it that I can observe and stay present and say, okay, that popped in. See ya. You might pop up later. Might be in 2 weeks. Who knows? So I've found that's a really accessible practice that I've taught so many people. thank you, Stephen Cook, for bringing that forward into the world. So
I'm curious what people have shared with you are discoveries they've made for themselves when you've taught them that practice.
they come into a relationship. One of the biggest ones is they come into a relationship with themselves. And they come into the knowing in that relationship, they have access to their own source capacity to move through, with and through is kind of my little saying, to move with and through whatever's happening. And that moving with and through is being present and moving with creation, moving with what is the world I want to create. I want to create a world in which I can move with and through every moment, regardless of the moments that are occurring, and not get stuck in my opinions about these events that are occurring. And these events might be my own internal events, and they could be external events. Either way. So those are probably two of the biggest things that come up immediately. What does it bring for you?
Well, I really love what you said about, getting in touch with yourself and your source and being able to source what's next for you. Because again, to me, that's when we talk about creating, we're talking about generating, something new. And whether it's a new state of being in ourselves, whether it's a new, action or relationship out in the world. But when we do that from a place of being in touch with our source, so much more is available. I mean, for me personally, I always find that I have more energy when I'm coming from that place. I think that place is also an expanded observer. And when you're in an expanded observer, more possibilities present themselves to you. And so I feel like I'm more creatively creative when I'm in that place. And even if I'm doing something that is difficult, so I'm building my own business and I'm having to learn all this website stuff and social media stuff and
Like that word.
But if I can come at that from this place of my own source, it can be a much more life enhancing experience for me. Because like with the social media, I can say instead of, I could say, what is in me that I'd like to share with the world today? And that feels very different from, my coach said I have to post 3 times this week, So I really, and I believe that as human beings, we are designed to live fueled by that source. I mean, I do think that is our design, which is why I think we experience such distress when we're not in that place. Right. I mean, again, I think that's the body's wisdom pointing us to how we are most designed to operate, which is fueled from that source, from that, as we say in the field of Tantra Mat, love being life opening up into the vibration of the eternal.
And as you mentioned in the very beginning of what CreateAWorld is for us, it's that collective wisdom community, that collective wisdom. And I know we believe it. All of us as collaborators believe this. And I know there's a lot of people out there that could probably say the same thing. There is a collective wisdom rising that says we want to be in relationship with who we are, sourcing ourselves, our original design on this planet now, on behalf of ourselves and everyone else. And from the Irish tradition, up with this, I will no longer put. It is time, it is now. And I feel like what rose today in this conversation is us saying, if we are in relationship and resourcing ourselves, it contributes to the whole collective movement of resourcing into our original designs. It's not that it's not there, it's always been there. It's that we are revealing to ourselves again that this is the world we want to create. And that's what I love about coming and just being in conversation without a plan, without opinions, that we can simply say, this is our vision. And these are some of the ways that we explore and become curious to get there. And we want you to come along with us because I know in your heart, in your mind, that's where you want to go to. So we want to hear from everyone else. How are you doing it? How are you creating the world of collective wisdom? And play with us. My gosh.
And so those of you who may not know, I was trained as a biologist, so I often tend to look through that lens. And when we talk about, communities, as in biological communities, when we talk about ecosystems, they are typically healthiest when they are diverse. And so I think it's important to recognize that when we say, your own unique and essential design, we really mean that. I mean, and if you think about the body, your body becomes this incredibly complex organism from a single cell. And so that those single cells then carry the ability to become a muscle cell or a blood cell or a nerve cell or bone and so we truly invite you to think about your unique and essential design. And yeah, it might look really different and it might sound really different than the person that you're sitting next to, but that's as it's meant to be. We are meant to be, and besides, to me, that's where the fun is, and the sparkle and the joy in life. I mean, I love pizza, but I would not want to have to eat pizza every meal for the rest of my life. I love a good brownie, but I wouldn't want to be limited to brownies for the rest of my life. There is I think we're fed emotionally by the diversity that we get to experience. I think we're fed in terms of our mind by the diversity that we get to be a part of. And so really want to encourage you to, when we say unique and essential, to really run with that.
Yeah. And we had a comment on the thread that just makes my heart sing. I'm so filled with joy that when we share our stories of how we make connections in our own being or with another being, and it stimulates the connection for someone else, I know I'm being my essential design, because that's what I'm here to do, is build those relationships, those connections within ourselves and with each other. That is a part of who I am. So I'm so appreciating the share of this connection with the pause and how animals in their own unique natures, bring us in relationship to ourselves and give us access point to moving with and through emotions and thoughts and experiences. So thank you. Thank you so much. My heart is full. And I'm going to breathe. And I'm going to relax. And I'm going to feel it. I'm going to feel the goodness of touching another human being, because I don't think we give ourselves enough measure of that either. I think we can go, oh, that's nice, instead of breathe, relax, feel, watch it, allow it, take it in. I think joy can be just as challenging as fear. Just like success and failure, success can be more challenging. What if I really did have full access to who I am as a unique and essential being? What if that really did happen? Oh, you know, wow. What was it years ago? They said if we really knew the power of our source energy, being, body, that we could light up a city for a week. I heard that decades ago. And I'm like, yeah, what if we really did get access to the fullness of who we are? What would we create in ourselves and in the world if we all resourced ourselves fully?
And something you said a minute ago, Victoria, is bringing me back to this idea of presence as part of having. Um, and so I think of this incredible whale watching trip that I took, where I was off Cape Cod, and we were watching two huge humpback whales. And it was the first time I'd ever done a whale watch on a little boat. It was a boat that only held 6 people. So you were like right at the water's edge. Um, and the whales came so close that first of all, you could smell their fishy breath. But then this massive, probably 30-foot humpback whale just swam right under the boat. I mean, almost close enough to touch. And I felt my heart just open, like just burst wide open. And it was like, oh, this is joy. But I had to let myself have it. I had to let myself be there in the moment and feel the warmth in my heart and smell the fishy breath and be in the rocking of the boat. And it's so easy for us to not inhabit those moments of our life. And yet that's where all the sweetness comes from. And so, the presence is also about letting yourself have the beautiful things that there are to have, petting your cat, snuggling with your dog, holding a child, listening to them giggle. We can't get the most out of that unless we can be present there in the moment.
Yeah, be willing and open and curious to what does bring us the joys, and that each one of us joys are uniquely ours, right? And I was thinking, I just go hang out with the trees, you hang out with the whales. I'd hang out with whales too. And what really stood out to me was in that moment of that whale going underneath the boat, you had a choice. You could have chosen to step into a fear of what if that whale comes and takes that boat and flips us. And instead, joy had its moment. You gave joy its place, and let whatever would happen with that moment happen, and not be concerned about it, not have opinions or fears. You just rode the wave of that ecstatic joy moment. And it had its completion. And that's the same thing that I think Brithwa does, is it doesn't matter what the moment is. Are you actually doing every moment in that way?
And
Yeah.
I think that's another thing that I would invite people to explore, is that when you find yourself in an emotion that is challenging, maybe it's deep sadness, maybe it's intense anger, take the risk and give yourself permission to ride the wave. Because in my experience, what you can discover is that it's not going to take you down. Like I think our fear is that if we really let ourselves experience this intense stuff, it's going to take us down and we're never going to recover. But again, as human beings, we're designed to move with this energy. I've heard people say emotion is energy in motion. So if we can ride the wave, and it doesn't mean that stuff isn't going to come up that you're going to have to deal with afterwards. But if you can let yourself ride the wave in the moment, you can get to the other side where the wisdom is and where the what's next is
And the
accessible.
wisdom is coming through the wave itself. And then you actually see it. And I know we just have a few minutes left. I really want to appreciate this moment as we're closing out the conversation, as we've ridden the wave of how to be with one another. And I will say what you said earlier about hurricanes. There is a plan that is helpful, and it doesn't create opinions. The same thing is true when you ride waves of emotion, of fear and anger and sadness. There is a plan to do it in a way that supports you on your own or with another, and be intentional about that so that you can support yourself through. And I think that's just an important thing to hold sacred with that too. So anything to close us out?
It's being a human being is not for the faint of heart. And we're in challenging times. And I think it's important to recognize that we are in challenging times. But we still have the opportunity to be in what is life enhancing, even in those challenging times. And
Create a world, life enhancement.
mm-hmm.
I love it.
And so it's about gathering the tools that we need for our particular unique and essential design to stand in what is life enhancing. And to allow ourselves to continue to hold for beauty and possibility. Because to me, that's what a human being is.
And in that, we give ourselves a place and everyone else a place, and know that we're a part of everything and everything's a part of us. It's been a joy.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.